My name is Rachel, and when this happened, I was 17, living with my 16-year-old sister Emily in a quiet stretch of southern Indiana, where cornfields bled into woods and everyone knew everyone. At least that's what we like to believe. Our mom had passed away years earlier, so it was just the three of us. And because Dad worked for a land survey company, he was gone a lot, sometimes from sunrise until well after dark, trekking through forests, marking boundaries, and mapping land that most people never bothered to visit. That December afternoon felt ordinary in the way only normal days do before they split your life into a before and an after. Emily and I decided to sneak off to the movies to watch a new horror film we technically weren't old enough to see, the kind packed with cheap jump scares and loud music. And somehow, nobody checked our tickets closely enough to stop us. Halfway through the movie, right during a quiet scene, my phone buzzed loudly in my pocket, making Emily elbow me as people hissed for silence. It was Dad. A second later, a text came through saying the cafe near his worksite was closed and asking if we could bring him lunch since we were already out. It didn't feel strange. Dad did that sometimes. So after the movie, we stopped by home, packed up food, and drove toward the wooded area where he usually worked, the road narrowing and darkening as bare winter trees crowded in on both sides. When we got close, Dad still wasn't answering calls, only sending short texts telling us to park and walk down toward the lake and wait for him there, which felt a little odd, but not enough to make us turn around. The sun was already sinking, staining the sky orange and purple, and the woods were quiet in that heavy way that makes every snapped twig sound louder than it should. Near the water, we spotted a man sitting on the dock with his back to us, hood pulled up, shoulders hunched as if he were cold. I called out my dad's name once, then again, my voice echoing weakly across the lake, but he didn't respond. As we got closer, something felt wrong, too wrong, and before I could stop myself, I reached out and pulled back the hood. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like I might vomit. It wasn't my dad. The man turned around slowly, smiling wide, his eyes locked on mine, and in his hand he casually waved my dad's phone like it was a prize he'd won. Everything after that blurred together in flashes, the way Emily screamed, the way the man lunged forward and grabbed her arm, the smell of cold water and rotting leaves, and the pure panic that ripped through me as adrenaline took over. I yanked Emily free with a strength I didn't know I had, and we ran, branches whipping our faces, lungs burning, feet slipping on mud, never once looking back. We barely made it to the car before he caught up, slamming his hand against the passenger window so hard the glass rattled, his face inches from Emily's, still smiling. I peeled out of there, tires screaming, heart pounding so loudly I could hear it over Emily's sobs. Later that night, police told us they'd recovered my dad's phone near the lake and believed it had been stolen earlier that day, that maybe the man was just trying to scare us, that we were lucky nothing worse happened. Dad was shaken but unharmed, and for a while we tried to convince ourselves it was over, just a terrifying coincidence. Then, at exactly 1 a.m., as the house sat quiet and dark, my phone buzzed again. A single message glowed on the screen. "I like how your bedroom TV lights up the street." My blood turned to ice. Slowly, trembling, I crept to my window and pulled back the curtain just enough to look down. There he was, standing beneath my second-floor window, face tilted up toward me, smiling that same smile, a gun raised in his hand. The gunshot shattered the night, glass exploding inward as I screamed and dropped to the floor. Police arrived in minutes, lights flooding the street, but he was gone. In the aftermath, they found a tracking device attached to the underside of my car tire, small enough that I never would have noticed it. They searched for him, questioned neighbors, followed every lead, but they never caught him. He never came back. Yet even now, years later, every unfamiliar noise outside at night makes my heart race, and every glowing window feels like an invitation I never meant to send, because some fears don't fade. This happened in 2021, during the worst stretch of COVID, when everything felt quieter and more fragile than it had ever had before. And I remember that silence being the first thing that unsettled me that night. I'd been working from home all day, staring at a laptop until my eyes burned, and by the time I finally packed up to drive to my parents' house in upstate Pennsylvania, the snowstorm had already swallowed the roads. The sky was pitch black, the kind of black that reflects nothing, and the snow came down in thick, blinding sheets that erased the edges of the world. I told myself I'd driven these roads 100 times, that I knew every curve by memory, but exhaustion makes you arrogant in quiet ways. Just after midnight, on a narrow forest road with trees packed so tightly they formed a wall on both sides, I took a bend too fast. The tires lost grip instantly. The car spun. The world turned white. And then there was a violent, bone-rattling impact as I slammed straight into a tree. The airbag exploded into my face. The engine died, and everything went dead silent, except for the ticking of cooling metal and my own panicked breathing. When I realized I wasn't seriously hurt, the fear didn't leave. It just changed shape. My phone barely had service, but I managed to call my dad, my voice shaking as I told him where I was. He said he was on his way, but he would take time. I sat there alone, headlights cutting 2 weak tunnels through the falling snow, surrounded by miles of forest with no houses, no streetlights, no signs of life. And that's when I heard the footsteps. At first, I thought it was just snow sliding off branches or my imagination filling in the gaps. But then I heard it clearly. Slow, deliberate crunching, circling somewhere beyond the reach of my lights. I called out, my voice sounding small and stupid in the cold air, asking if anyone was there. But the footsteps didn't answer. Instead, I heard something else, a wet, dragging sound, like meat being pulled across ice, followed by a soft, sickening slurp that made my stomach twist. I locked the doors, even though I knew how useless that would be if someone really wanted to get in. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time stopped behaving normally. When the sounds faded, curiosity overpowered fear in the worst possible way. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out into the snow, the cold biting through my clothes instantly. That's when I saw the boot prints. They were deep, heavy impressions, not fresh like someone rushing, but methodical, slow, circling my car again and again, as if whoever made them had been studying it. Near the edge of the trees, the snow was darker, stained. Blood. It led away from the road, dragged in a long, uneven line. Against every instinct screaming at me to get back in the car, I followed it, my light shaking as it cut through the snowfall. About 20 feet into the woods, I found the deer, or what was left of it. Its body lay twisted and torn, steam rising faintly from the exposed flesh, and where its head should have been, there was nothing, just jagged bone and shredded muscle. It hadn't been eaten, it had been destroyed. The realization hit me all at once. Whatever did this hadn't been hunting, it had been playing. I ran back toward the road, heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. And that's when I saw it, sitting neatly on my driver's seat, framed perfectly by the open car door, was the deer's severed head. Its eyes were glassy and half open, snow melting into the matted fur, blood soaking into the upholstery like it belonged there. I didn't scream. I couldn't. Something inside me snapped into pure survival, and I bolted down the road, waving my arms wildly, slipping in the snow, not caring what was behind me, as long as it wasn't close enough to touch. Headlights appeared through the storm, and I collapsed into the road just as my dad slammed on the brakes. He pulled me into the car, asking questions I couldn't answer, and when we drove back to the crash site together, the head was gone. The seat was smeared with blood,
The snow around the car churned and dragged, leading back toward the trees, as if someone or something had reclaimed it. We stood there in the falling snow, saying nothing, because there was nothing that made sense to say. I never called the police. I didn't know how to explain what I'd seen without sounding insane.